We're just waiting on Henry. Beth and Alan are unable to join us. A minute.
Did Henry confirm that he
You say
was?
Beth and Alan are not going to join us?
Yeah, Beth has the Concom meeting right now.
Okay.
Which is very exciting. and Alan is out of town and not in an area where he has a reliable connection.
Okay.
I did not hear from Henry that he would not be able to attend, so
Okay.
we do have a quorum though, because we have 4 members, so we can proceed. It's 7:02, and since we have a quorum, I will call this meeting to order and get this started. So welcome everybody to the first meeting of the Shutesbury CPC for the new fiscal year. Everybody is participating remotely, myself, Matteo Pengallo, Cliff Reed, Rita Farrell, Elaine Paleo, and absent are Henry Geddes, Beth Wilson, and Alan Hansen.
And just for the record, Anna, your last name?
Heard. Heard.
Thank you.
The first item on the agenda is to review and vote on the minutes from our previous meeting, May 16th. Is there a motion to consider the minutes?
So moved.
Moved.
Easy answer.
You can have it, Rita.
Oh, thanks, Cliff. You can second it.
Is there a
I'll
second?
second it.
Okay. Is there any discussion about the minutes?
No, they were great. Thank you, Elaine.
Nope.
Thanks for
You're
getting them out so quickly, too.
I just finish them up and send them
Yeah.
out.
That's great.
Yeah. Yes, thanks.
All right, seeing no discussion, we'll take a vote. Reed.
Aye.
Farrell,
Aye.
Paleo,
I
Pengallo, aye. All right, next item on the agenda is an update about our sort of outstanding CPA projects, which I believe at the moment are just 2. I might be wrong about that, but the West Quabbin Conservation Area parking situation, Beth has informed me that the Concom is working to get this was her update as of August 12th. They were trying to get a curb cut permit from the highway department. They have the parking lot layout, and once they have the permit, work can start. And
That's great.
that's the extent of it. So it sounds like it's moving forward, which is basically all we asked of them by the end of the summer.
Is the highway department going to do it? Do you know, Matteo?
That was the original
Plan.
when Miriam put it together, that was the original, I think,
Okay.
intention. So, and it sounds from what Beth is saying is that's still the plan.
Great.
As far as the town common signboard, I gave a report about this to the historical commission, the Williamstown Art Conservation Center. I reached out to them in late July for an update about this, and they've been really good about staying in touch with me about how it's doing. I actually pull up see if you find the photos. Here we go. Some photos of our beloved signboard. It's undergoing its process of what they've been doing is removing the modern latex paint. There have been multiple layers of it, and so it's been kind of slow going because it is the latex paint is a little difficult to remove safely. But they have started the work on it, and they've been able to get enough of the modern paint off to get down to the lead paint underneath and see the original lettering and the original the font and typeface and such. One of the things that they've found in the process of doing that's been somewhat interesting is you can't quite see it in the you can see it in this picture. The lettering underneath the wood is kind of swollen up because the moisture that gets trapped underneath all those layers of paint. And so, I mean, they're not going to do anything to try to like sand it down or return it to, you know, to flush. They're going to try to keep it the way it is as much as possible. But it sounds like it's a slow process. They haven't really looked at the cap yet, the top piece, which is the next sort of major question that the historical commission has to address and talk about with the select board about what to do about that, because the cap that is on it, as we learned, is not authentic historically. It was a later addition. And so that raises some questions about preservation and what exactly it is that we are preserving. But it sounds like this phase of the project should be done over the winter, and depending on what the decision is about the top piece, the guide board would be coming back at some point in 2025.
Right?
Are there any questions? That's everything I know. So.
Great.
All right. If there are no questions, we'll move on to item 3 on the agenda, which is a discussion on the off-cycle grant applications. So I don't, in my experience, my understanding, this is probably the first time, well, I guess technically when the district applied for the track funding previously, it was in theory, it was after the deadline. And so we voted to accept it after the deadline. But this is like the first time that we've had, I think Shutesbury has had true sort of off-cycle applications. And I was interested to find out from the Community Preservation Coalition that this is not an uncommon thing. That quite often applicants will come to CPCs outside of the normal application process for a variety of reasons. A property suddenly becomes available, an historic resource is suddenly threatened, a construction timeline or other matching grant opportunities come up that need to be sort of acted on in a timely fashion. And some towns have adopted specific sort of procedures for the handling off-cycle requests. And that's something that I think we can talk about at our next meeting when we talk about the community preservation plan, because that's the kind of information that I think we should, or at least other towns have included in their community preservation plan. So we can look at examples of what other towns have done and think about like how we want to address it. It happens so rarely that I don't know that it's a huge pressing issue, really. But we do have at least one, possibly two, to talk about tonight. And so I wanted to sort of give an opportunity to those potential applicants to talk about what they are asking for. And then what we would do as a committee is basically decide tonight, vote on whether we would grant this is in effect an extension of the previous fiscal year deadline to these applicants. And then at our next meeting, before the public hearing that we have scheduled in September for the community preservation plan, that's when we would formally vote on the applications. So what we'd be doing today is just basically voting to say, we will consider an off-cycle application from you. And then in the next meeting, look at that application and skipping altogether the determination of eligibility phase. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, so on that note, are there any other questions or comments on this from the other committee members?
No,
So,
go ahead, Cliff.
just a question. So if we are considering an off-cycle application for this, and then with the need for town meeting in approving that, is that something where a special town meeting would need to be called to then have this presented and voted on?
Yeah, so right now, and Rita, you can probably speak to this better, but I believe the intention is for a variety of reasons for the town to have a special town meeting in November, not just for these off-cycle grant requests, but there are a couple of other things the town needs to address. Going forward, it seems to be common practice for towns that have specific policies about off-cycle grant requests to stipulate that the CPC itself is not going to sort of put in the legwork of organizing a special town meeting, that potential applicants have to go to the select board or whoever the authority is that's calling the town meeting and arrange for that themselves.
Mhm.
And otherwise, whatever action we take in recommending it, it's just going to go to whatever happens to be the next town meeting, be that a special town meeting that gets scheduled or the annual town meeting eventually, right? Which obviously would sort of obviate the entire purpose of having an off-cycle
Mhm.
request.
Mhm.
But and that's something I think we can talk about in more detail also when we talk about including a policy on this. But in answer to, the short answer to your question is, my understanding is that we do have a special town meeting on the books for November, which will be our second special town meeting this year.
Yes.
Yeah, it's tentatively I had the 21st of November, so it's a Thursday, a week before Thanksgiving. Thanksgiving's on the 28th. So we were trying to fit it in after the election, and there's so much work to be done for when you have a presidential election year. So we were trying to respect Grace's sanity, preserve Grace's sanity, our town clerk. So that's why we scheduled it for that time. And you're right, Mateo, we have a number of other items for that special town meeting.
Are there any other questions or comments about this from other committee members? All right, well, seeing none, I'd like to sort of turn things over first to one of the two potential off-cycle applicants, to just sort of give them the chance to share briefly what they are asking for, why they're asking for a consideration off-cycle. And we'll start off with, I guess, Doug, if you want to tell us what you're asking for.
Yeah, be happy to do that. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Normally we would do it on cycle. In this circumstance, it's really about timing. So you gave some examples of property becoming available, that sort of thing. We're actually trying to meet a construction cycle. So for us at present, this is a project we brought to you before. We withdrew that application for a variety of reasons, but we're currently in the design process for our renovation and restoration of our track and the interior field and adjoining fields around that. And the designs should be ready and in place for a December, early January of this year bidding process. And so what we're hoping to do is to make sure that we have as complete a project as we can, and the more secured funding we have in hand, the better. We cannot go under contract with a vendor without funds in hand or authorized. We have a variety of sources that are funding this project. We can do the project or some phases of the project with the money that we have available to us at the moment. But to sort of realize the full project, it's better to get it and bid it all in one fell swoop with potential construction companies. So the more money we have secured, and so if you guys are able to take this up in your November town meeting and secure additional funding for us, that helps us in our contracting process. We'll still move ahead with the project either way, but it will enhance the project in its initial phase and also potentially be a little more cost effective to do more things all in one fell swoop as opposed to having to phase some pieces of the project. So we're hopeful that you'll be able and willing to consider it, sort of off cycle for that purpose. The ask is 136,000. That's a component piece of a larger ask of other CPAs of all four communities to help fund the project. Use the same concept of apportioning that cost to each of the communities based on the way we apportion capital costs in our regional schools, which uses CQV from each of the four towns. So that's sort of how we came up with that number relative to a total amount of CPA requests in the just shy of $2 million mark. So
I'm sorry, Doug, could you tell me the number again? I was typing and missed
Oh,
it.
So the request is for 136,000.
Thank you.
And of course, you know, we understand that this is, you know, it's got to fit within the resources you have available and the other projects you have that are in the pipeline, and you know, we understand all of that, and so it's you know, as I've said to other CPA committees in other towns, it's, you know, it's your choice about whether to support it, how to support it, what level to support it at. And we're hopeful that this is a project that you're interested in and willing to take up at this, you know, in this off-cycle time frame.
Doug, one question, just looking at the figures, the sources of funds, it looks like something on the order of 1.25-ish million for what is being requested from the different towns CPA funding for that. What happens if the funding does come up short? You mentioned that there would be work possible to initiate based on the current funding that you have, but what are the contingencies if the funding requests come up short?
Yeah, in that circumstance, you know, how we shape the bid may change a little bit. We may do what are called add alternates to it. We may just hold on certain aspects of the project and not include them in the bid for the you know, coming summer construction season. So, for example, you know, there's aspects of the lighting. The total cost for lighting for this, you know, facility would be about $500,000 of the total cost. We might just do the preparatory work and not actually put the poles and the lights up. That could potentially, you know, reduce the overall ask or the overall resources needed by about $350,000. So that's an example of some other things that, you know, can still get the project moved forward and built, and yet, you know, there's things we'll want to do in a second round some other time, if that's the case. And so we'll do some staging of certain things. Some aspects of it are less critical to success than others, but they're nice to be considered in the whole project. And as I mentioned, sort of my cover letter, a bit cost effective if we can do it in one bid. So things like that will be the approach we take.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
So Doug, I just had a question about the timing. I know Shutesbury's anticipating doing this special town meeting. What about Leverett and Pelham?
So Pelham is also doing a special town meeting. I met with their CPC, I want to say a week ago. I think it was a week ago, maybe a week and a half ago. Their Community Preservation Act committee considered it and you know, supported recommending it. So, you know, I think our next conversation with their select board, they are anticipating a special town meeting this fall as well. I forget exactly when. I think it might be November as well, but it may be earlier than that. So I'll probably connect with them in fairly short order to see if their select board will place it on their warrant for their special town meeting. So if those are secured, along with yours in November, that's available for us for the bidding. The Leverett, you know, I reached out to Leverett Community Preservation Act. Their chair reached back out to me and said, we're not going to do an off cycle. We're going to wait and do it as part of our regular spring cycle. So they just, for whatever reason, and it could be any number of reasons, and they didn't give any reasons, but they decided they would wait and go to spring. I did not make a case for why I'm asking off cycle. So, not in a sort of full way. So that may have been a factor, but I think they may have also looked, I think they're also going to have a special town meeting this fall, but it might be coming really soon. So they may not have felt they had a sufficient amount of time to vet a project in advance of that. But that's just a guess on my part.
Yeah. Okay.
And Amherst, let me skip to Amherst. So in July, we went to the Amherst Community Preservation Act Committee and made an additional request. They've already made 2 other appropriations from CPA, but they voted in favor of an additional appropriation there. We asked them for a larger amount because we felt there was some energy there and some timing. You know, with a town council form of government, they can meet and vote the appropriation sort of any particular meeting that they want. And so it's really a matter of scheduling with the town council about them considering that appropriation. And to that point, given that request was 800,000, again, it's to support, going under contract. They're probably likely to make the request to the regional schools to say, well, if you get these other resources from these other towns, we don't want to spend as much. We'll probably need to craft in fairly short order an intermunicipal agreement. And especially for any number of reasons, because we might come in under, if we're fortunate and our bids and our construction bidding process comes in well under our budgets, we may not need to spend all that we've had made available to us, and we'll have to have some agreed upon way for leveraging the funds and balancing the how those funds will be split across the 4 communities. So I think that's some work we'll need to do as we move forward too.
So Mateo, I don't know in our community preservation plan whether or not we ever addressed, or even if we need to address, the fact that we'll be spending CPA funds in another community, which is totally, is legal and acceptable. But, there might be questions asked. And so it's just something we should think about when we have our, when we look at the plan. If we don't mention it, it might be a good idea just to incorporate something that's a legitimate use of CPA funds, that you can do it in another community.
Yeah, I think we can certainly look to include something that is specific to that. But you're right, it is completely legal and is routinely done.
Yeah, and it's the first time we'll be doing it, so there might be a lot of questions asked. Because it's a pretty significant amount of money. It's what, about a third, or maybe a little less than a third of all of our money, maybe 25%.
Yeah, we currently have in dedicated for open space and recreation, we have just 14,454. In the reserve and undesignated, we have a total of 571,695.
Oh, okay. So it's more
So
than I thought.
the funding is there, but it's a significant amount of
Yeah.
funding that's in reserve.
Yeah. Good. Okay.
Doug?
Yeah, just to add one little kind of quirky thing with regional schools that you can maybe be helpful to provide some comfort to your townspeople is that technically each of the 4 towns are owners of the regional property. So as of being a regional school property that we're working on, you do technically have ownership of that, or your piece of it. So each of the 4 towns do have ownership rights, as it were, to that. And so I think that's maybe helpful to people to have them think about it a little differently. It's not owned by Amherst and, held by the region. It's actually region owned property, and therefore it's owned by the 4 communities.
Right. Are there other questions or comments on the request from other committee members?
Nope.
All right, well, seeing none then, let's proceed to vote on, I guess I will entertain a motion first to grant the regional school district extension on the fiscal year 24 application deadline so they can submit an off-cycle grant request for the track and field project.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
I'd like to be as specific as possible.
Yeah, well, it's
Could
good
you
idea. I wasn't about to repeat
that,
it.
please?
You have to repeat it now. I don't.
Repeat it, please. Either repeat it or send it to me in an email, please.
All right,
I
I'll
can't
send it
type
to
that
you.
fast.
I'll send it to you in an email.
Okay.
Making a note to myself to do that. All right. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, we'll vote on the motion. Farrell,
Aye.
Reed,
Aye.
Leo,
Aye.
Pangallo, aye. All right, thank you. There is a second off-cycle request from the Historical Commission. We don't have a letter. We don't have this in writing from the chair, unfortunately.
Mateo, we have a question.
Oh, yes, David.
Hey, everybody. Sorry I was late. I think all the material that I was interested in, I'm working, of course, with Doug and many others on the track and field project. Appreciate you entertaining this off-cycle proposal. It's nice to see some old friends on this this call. I am actually babysitting with my twin baby granddaughters up in Irving. So I'm sorry I was a few minutes late, but it was bedtime. So anyway, it's a wonderful project, as you know, in Amherst, and we've been working for years on it. And you know, we're close. We're as close as we've ever been. So really appreciate you considering the proposal with the other towns. So thank you.
Great, thank you. Yeah, and I believe, Doug, you already submitted the application, right? So we don't, we already have it in hand.
You do. I did fill it out, but you know, look it over. If there's anything that's missing or additional information you want, given that we're sort of in a odd cycle of time, please let me know. I'll try to get that to you guys as quickly as possible. I know that the Finance Committee in Shutesbury has reached out about some of the funding for the project, so I think they've got some interest in sort of how this is all fitting together. So I'm going to get them some information in the next week or so about that, just so they have a clear understanding as well.
Great, thank you. Okay, so the other application, or the other request for an off-cycle grant application, is from the Historical Commission. I'm going to be wearing sort of two hats as I talk about this, because I've been tasked with heading up this project and writing the grant for it. But it's essentially seeking an off-cycle grant consideration for a protective gazebo for the guide board for when the guide board returns. I should sort of clarify that this is not saying that the CPC is authorizing the gazebo, because that's not up to the CPC. It's really up to the select board, because the town common is town property and the select board governs it. So even if we agree to approve the grant or request or approve the consideration of the off-cycle request, that doesn't mean that we're saying the gazebo is going to be built. But the thinking from the Historical Commission is this: restoring the gazebo, restoring the guide board is costing a lot of money. And in large part, it's because of the exposure that the gazebo has. Its physical placement on that common at the top of the hill has exposed it over the many, many years to the elements in a way that a lot of similar guide boards in other towns around us, like if you go towards like Montague Center and other places, they're not subjected to. And one of the key recommendations from the Williamstown Art Conservation staff was it needs to be protected, either by moving it indoors or at the very least shielding it from the elements. And so the Historical Commission at its most recent meeting voted to approve requesting an off-cycle grant application from the CPC for part of the cost of building the gazebo, which is an allowable or eligible cost according to the Community Preservation Coalition, because it falls under preserving an historical resource. The project cost, the total project cost, is about $1,200. It's actually a little bit more than that, because the architect's costs are also included, but they're being donated. So the cost of the project is over 12,000. The labor is being donated. The labor for construction is being donated. The labor for design is being donated. The Historical Commission is going to be putting up some money for some of the supplies, and the grant request would be for $4,300 in historical resource funding from the CPA to contribute towards those materials. So that's where we are. I don't have a actual written grant application to present to you because the committee did not actually vote on the grant application at its previous meeting. It merely voted to authorize requesting submitting an application off cycle.
So that means that we can't actually approve it since we don't have the application, but we can say yes or no, we would accept it if we saw it.
Yeah, so as with the request, as with the action we just took on with the school request from the district, we aren't approving or denying the application. We are approving or denying granting them the extended deadline to again to our September meeting to submit an application.
Okay, okay.
Janice.
Historical Commission, so I just wanted to back up what Mateo was saying. I think he described it very well. We're really excited about getting the guide board restored, but the people at Williamstown really drilled it into us that if you just stick that back up on the common, all that work's going to be destroyed in a matter of years, and that you really need to provide some kind of protection. So we've tried to come up with a design that is not too obtrusive, but can be protective. And the last I knew, a couple of the members were going to go talk to the building committee to get feedback from them, and then eventually we will get to the select board as well to make sure that they're comfortable with it. But it's all just to be able to put the guide board back, but to give it protection so it can last a long time.
Right. Because without it, the concern from the conservators was basically we would be looking at investing this kind of restoration funding in it again within the next decade or 2 decades. Whereas the protection from the gazebo, like the gazebo will require some kind of basic maintenance over the years, but being of pressure treated wood, it's going to be a lot easier and cheaper to maintain than doing historic preservation work on the guide board itself. And the reason that it's being presented as an off-cycle request as opposed to in the regular cycle is because, as I mentioned at the start, we don't know exactly when this thing is coming back. And so the feeling from the Historical Commission was if it's returned to us early in 2025, it would be best to have the gazebo in place because there is no indoor place to store it. It won't fit in town hall. It won't fit in Old Town Hall. It physically will not fit through the doors. And so, and if we were to ask the Williamstown Art Conservation Center to hold the piece for us until the gazebo was built, then there would probably be additional costs involved with that. There would certainly be more than the cost of building a gazebo in a timely fashion. So our sense was we wanted to have the gazebo in place before it came back. And the placement of the gazebo, it's going to change the placement of the guide board slightly because it needs to be moved back somewhat from the road edge. It's not very far back. It's not going to be noticeably far back. But the placement of it is something that the Historical Commission did check with the Highway Department and the chief about concerns about sightline and traffic and issues like that on the roadside. So those things have also been already sort of factored into it. But as Janice said, we are sort of still waiting to get some kind of feedback from the building committee itself on it.
Mm-hmm. What is the approximate size of the gazebo? And
it's roughly the same size as the guide board. It's not like a bandstand kind of huge thing. Yeah. I can when we submit if we have the chance to submit the actually I can share the drawings that Bert sent. Hang on one second. So this is the kind of structure we're looking at. It is really sort of tight to the structure of it in order to provide protection from the elements, both coming from the sides as well as down. high enough that it still provides some visibility of the guide board itself, though. Janice?
I just wanted to say too, that the other consideration that, at least some of us are concerned about, is that the volunteer labor by these professional carpenters is available for now, but if we have to wait another year, it's possible that they may not be around, they'll be too busy, or, something else will happen. So for us, that's a considerable consideration as well.
So who's doing the design of the gazebo?
So the design drawings were drawn by, let's see, I know I had the name on them. Duran Fernandez O'Brien.
So I see Dave Zomek is still here, but it just make sure that it follows the CPA historic rules. Dave, are you still there? I haven't looked at this at a long time, but
Yeah, I am still here, Rita.
yeah, so when you're constructing something to go over with CPA money under historic, it's the National Park Service, is that right?
Yeah,
You know,
there
the
is some,
design guidelines.
yeah, there is some reference to the National Park Service guidelines, so
So
I'm not, yeah, I'm not an expert on the historic resource piece, but
Yeah.
they should definitely look at that.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think so. One of the things that that Stuart pointed out from the coalition was the sort of the distinction between the restrictions that are placed on restoration work and the restrictions that are placed on preservation, and that protective measures would fall under preservation. And so
Okay.
anything like if we were the kind of work that the Conservation Center, for example, is doing on the gazebo, on the guide board itself, excuse me, the G keeps throwing me, the guide board itself, that has to comply with those restrictions.
okay,
But that preservation is sort of, it's distinct from it.
okay,
But I think that the point that you're raising is of concern, and in terms of like, does the design of the gazebo, is it in keeping with the
Right,
architectural
right.
flavor, right, of Town Common and the other buildings that are around it, and that profile, that historical profile that's there? And I think that that's something that, the Historical Commission has been talking about.
Okay,
It's something that obviously when this goes to the select board, who's going to have the final approval, that they're going to be the final arbiter on. And I think it's also something that clearly when we're talking about whether we're going to vote for the application is something that we're going to want to have a discussion on.
okay. Yeah, I just want to make sure we're not gonna get into trouble.
Running afoul of that.
Okay, so do you want a motion to?
Yeah, if there are no other comments or questions from other members of the committee, is there a motion to grant the Historical Commission permission to submit an off-cycle grant application for the protective gazebo for the Historic Guide Board?
Did you get that, Elaine?
Motion to approve that an application for an off-cycle project can come forward to the CPC in our September meeting for going forward to our November special town meeting? Is that clear?
Yeah,
Great.
that would be the same for the regional school too.
Excellent. I'll just copy and paste.
Mhm. So moved.
And seconded.
All right. Is there any further discussion? Seeing no further discussion, Farrell,
Aye.
Reed,
Aye.
Vallejo,
Aye.
and Gallo, aye.
So we would expect to review these applications at that September 19th meeting. Is that correct?
Yes, so before the public hearing, which I anticipate will be very well attended by hundreds of people.
Yeah, absolutely.
Throngs of people.
We'll discuss and vote on the on those applications.
Okay. All right, great.
Good.
All right, thank you very much. Thank you, Doug and Janice and David.
Yep, thanks for coming.
Thank you so much. We appreciate it.
Thanks.
Thank you all.
I have a question for the committee. There was someone, Jake Mitchell, who came on for about 5 minutes.
Yep.
Was that somebody that was planning to be here, or does anybody know
Maybe he was supposed to be in another meeting.
if he was supposed to be in another meeting?
I don't know.
I don't know.
Do I put him in the minutes?
I know a Jake Mitchell, but he lives in Leverett, so
Yeah, do I put him in the minutes?
no.
No? Okay.
He was at the wrong place.
He came to the wrong place. Okay.
Okay, the next item on our agenda is the public hearing on the 19th. And so this is the second year that we're going to hold the public hearing that is required by the CPA statute at the start of our grant cycle rather than the end of it, as recommended by Stuart Saganor, and essentially with the intention of updating our preservation plan or hearing from people about things that we should be considering in our preservation plan, which is what's required by law. Any thoughts about this? Last year it was not super well attended. I think we had one question.
My thought is that we should have it in person and hold a pizza night.
Well, that's a good idea.
Oh, yeah.
Very good idea.
Have somebody do something for kids outside in the back and see if we can get more than one person to show up.
So we all chip in to buy pizza?
We have the funding, right?
We have our funding.
Yeah.
the operating funding.
What do you
Um,
think?
Hey, it's a great idea.
Sounds good.
Might ask people to RSVP just so we're not sitting on 15 pizzas.
Well, maybe we could do it jointly with the library and have the library do a kids program the same night. And, you know, the more community people that come and hear about what we're doing and what we could do, the better we are, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So you're volunteering to help organize the concurrent activities?
Sure, I have nothing else.
I was
going
gonna say,
on.
you have nothing
I
else
have
to do.
nothing going on.
The library's done now, right? Basically.
Yeah.
Oh, the library's
In the work.
done, yeah. My son's getting married next weekend, no problem. I got plenty of time.
What is it? So if we're going to do this in person, I'm assuming that I need to clear this with Becky in terms of making sure that we have the space. on that
Yes.
day at the
Yep, they have to have the meeting room downstairs, and we'll have the outside space also. So, you know, it could be a picnic. If everything goes right, it would be a picnic. If it doesn't, it'll be inside. And, you know, we could get the library to do a kids program that same night. And that way Marianne will advertise it on her site, and, you know, we'll get more people knowing about it.
Okay. I'm unfamiliar with whether or not the legal ad needs to stipulate that there will be pizza.
I don't think so.
Should I describe it as a public hearing and community gathering, or is that?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, then I will reach out to Becky about making sure that that space is reserved and then get the ad out. Hopefully in the next couple of days so we can have it posted in time for legal compliance. Elaine, if you want to I guess, check with Mary Ann, see if there's something the library wants to do on that day. So
I have
again,
a few meetings with her every once in a while.
September 19th at 7 o'clock.
It's
We have-
7 o'clock.
That's
Yeah.
what's on the, yeah, that's what's on the,
Okay. Might be dark by then in September.
should we do it earlier?
You want to
We
do it
could
at 6?
earlier. Why don't we do it
We
at
do it
6?
at 6.
Yeah.
Okay.
Does anybody know who this person without a name is? That is on our meeting.
Nope.
Whoever just joined us, could you identify yourself for the purposes of the minutes?
Oh, I'm trying to observe. My name is Sam McLeod. I'm the chair of the Amherst CPA committee. I thought I would come in as a participant watching, not being part of your live screen. But there I am. So I was trying to not disturb your meeting and lo and behold, so forgive me. I will just have occasional interest in some issues that might arise.
Could you please spell your last name for me?
MacLeod, Sam McLeod. I have interest in the region, of course, as you do as well.
No problem. Just need you to
You know,
identify.
I
for a minute.
understand completely. I'm very familiar and thank you for what you're doing. And I'm sorry to
No problem.
distract the conversation.
No, no distraction at all.
And Theo, do you expect that, do you want us to go through the community preservation plan and come prepared with any edits? If we have any edits to the plan?
So what we did last year and what's on the schedule for this year is that at the September meeting, it is just that, well, it is also now considering the off-cycle grant requests, but also the public hearing portion is just for us to listen. It's a listening session
Okay.
entirely. And gathering input. The decisions about revising and updating and voting on those changes to the preservation plan, the determination of eligibility form and the grant application form would then happen at the October meeting.
Okay.
So yeah, I mean, obviously it would be probably helpful to read it over, and I mean it's a gripping read. So, you know,
I have it memorized.
yeah.
I have it pasted on my walls.
But yeah, for the September meeting, it's just to hear people
Okay, just a public
about
hearing.
the plan itself, and then also like, you know, other thoughts about CPA activity potentially in the town.
And just in terms of getting the word out about the, so there'll be, can ask Becky to do a town announce.
Yeah, we'll do what we did last year, which was, so we did the town announce. We did obviously the legal ad, and some flyers at the library, at town hall, at the Lever transfer station, the post office.
Did you
The
put
co-op.
anything up at next door?
I put it on next door.
Yeah.
And if this is in conjunction with Mary Ann, she'll put it in her blast too.
Yeah.
So we'll do all that again to try to draw some attention to it.
Great.
Good.
Great.
Is there any other discussion on the public hearing, the 19th? All right, seeing none. The only other item of other business that I had was we had discussed the idea of holding a grant application workshop in late September. I don't know. I guess what is the sense of the committee about that? Is that something that we still want to hold? My concern is that we might put a lot of work into planning it and then have a couple of sort of the familiar faces submitting applications who don't need any workshopping or help.
Is it possible that we could wait until the September 9th public hearing and see if there's some interest from people who have never put in an application before, and we'd be kind of holding their hand? Because I agree with you,
Yeah.
otherwise it's
Yeah,
not worth,
it's a big
doing.
wait, yeah. Why
Yeah,
don't
I
we
think-
see, wait till after the public hearing, or mention it at the public hearing and see if there's any interest.
Yeah,
Mhm.
okay. Sounds good. We'll do that then. Is there any other business?
No, I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Passing.
I'm gonna go to another meeting.
Yeah.
Cause I'm
Sweet. I'll-
my third tonight.
And I'll second that motion.
Any discussion? Seeing none. Reed,
Aye.
Leo,
aye.
Errol,
Aye,
Pengallo, aye. All right, thank you all very much.
okay, good night, everybody.
Good night.
Aye.